White Sox fans, welcome into Sunday Funday with Sox on Tap. It's Johnny Nani, Tony on Tap, and NWI Steve joining me. Full crew doing a little three-way action tonight, gentlemen. How we feeling?
We're here and we're alive, Johnny. We are here and alive. I can confirm that I have woke up to do this show. I hope you guys are feeling fantastic today.
Hey, yo, boys. Yep, there is proof of life for the listeners out there. The three of us might have gotten together at Casa de Marchese yesterday. Had a couple, 2, 3, or 4 dozen pops. Needless to say, a little sluggish, a little lethargic here, but we're fighting through it. So in a lot of ways, we're really embodying the very team that we're here to talk about.
Yeah, there was a lot going on both last night and throughout the week for this White Sox. I've titled this one Wildest White Sox Week Ever. We were talking about it joking just before the show. Not a whole lot to discuss tonight. You know, maybe just a couple 2-3 things that went on in White Sox world this week, guys. Absolutely crazy. It really was from start to finish. It seemed like every single day there was a new major topic hitting the interwebs and obviously happening IRL. But, you know, it was quite the series of events to track. Unfortunately, not all good here. But there's a lot to get into. We'll break it down here on Sunday Funday with Sox on Tap. So we appreciate you guys joining in. Oh, yeah. All right. Comment section's already going. What I was going to get to. Go on Dev Sports, YouTube, subscribe, get the notification bell set up, all of that good stuff. So you can jump in the comment section. We've got, we're looking a little greasy, some grease ball shit going on here. Jump in the comments like those guys.
There's a lot of grease ball shit going on last
night.
There
was. That's On Tap Sportsnet on YouTube and On Tap Sportsnet on Facebook, Twitter, people, X people, whatever. We love you, but we cannot see your comments. So head over to the YouTube and the Facebook. And as always, check us out at ontapsportsnet.com. Guys, where do we even start? How are you feeling overall about the White Sox after this week?
No idea where to start, Johnny. I know that there was some things said in my garage, though, last night by the man below us, NWI Steve, that made me feel really great about the state of the Sox. But, I have no idea where to start. Do we start with the Kenny Williams, Rick Hahn no longer being with the White Sox? Do we start with the relocation talk? Do we talk about the craziness that happened? What was that, Friday night? Out in section 161, 162. Just a week for headlines with the Chicago White Sox. Not exactly all in the best ways possible.
You also forgot, though, Vanilla Ice coming out and saying that America needs to support the White Sox.
That was very important.
True. Yes. The famous TikTok. We will get that clip. We need to get that clip. With all of this going on, let's go and start with relocation reports, because this kind of bookended the week, right? Remember, it was Monday and it was Crane's Chicago business in conjunction with Boob Nightingale on the reports that Jerry would possibly be open to selling the team and or relocating because the stadium lease is coming up 2029. I don't think it's 2028 as Boob listed today in his notebook, but a lot of ideas thrown out. Soldier Field area, Arlington Heights is a possibility, and you also had United Center area as a possibility. So a lot to go off here, but initial thoughts to the prospect of the White Sox possibly relocating.
Not a huge fan, obviously. This team's been in this ballpark my entire life. Not a huge fan of the thought of having to trek down to the Soldier Field area, assuming that would need the Bears to move, which seems all but going to happen at this point.
They're going to move. They just don't know where as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, we talked about this a little bit earlier this week, Steve, where you said, could the city of Chicago possibly lose not one, but 2 teams here within the next decade? And, the proposition of moving the White Sox to Soldier Field probably makes a lot of sense for the city in terms of having them in that area on that property. But the parking's nightmarish. Getting in and out of that area is a disaster.
You're not excited about tailgating in McCormick Place, Tony?
No, I'm not excited about tailgating in McCormick Place. Not one bit. we've got the perfect tailgate setup where we are right now. You throw Arlington Heights out there. Fuck that. I don't want to move this team farther north. That's stupid to me to have to think about, all the things that'll get said about the White Sox being on the north side in the suburbs. It's not the mentality or the
brand, the identity, the brand, right?
Yeah, it's the brand. It would be hard to market that brand.
Not that the brand's doing too well these days, but historically,
Yes, facts. But those two options don't really do it for me. I think if you look at the recent Jerry Reinsdorf purchase of some land over near the United Center, that could make some sense. Remains to be seen where exactly they would put that ballpark. I don't even know if the land that he purchased was big enough to hold a Major League Baseball stadium, but he seems to have some interest in that area over there near the United Center. I don't know. It would be really hard for me to envision the White Sox playing somewhere else than 35th and Shields.
Yeah, just real quick technicality on the United Center sort of area one. If I remember correctly, that essentially looked like part of a parking lot that was purchased by the Reinsdorf group over there. And I think we all, it's not official, but I think we all can kind of assume that is a stadium, the programming, digital programming, endeavor, sort of expansion project in the works. But that was the only technicality I had on it. Steve, you've got some thoughts.
Yeah. The Arlington Heights thing would just be a fucking nightmare. That just is absolutely horrendous to even think about. Basically, if that is something that were to happen, I would then basically be able to go to opening day and then pretty much only weekend games. Because for me to get to a game on a weeknight, just no way that would possibly happen. One of the things I'm almost wondering about is, with this idea of them, in Arlington Heights, conceivably you would think that it would be somewhere geographically close to where that loser football team would be moving to. Would the city of Arlington Heights, and their extortion efforts of their taxpayers, would they think it's more palatable if they had two teams there? So this way you could make use of that space kind of year round from a sports standpoint and from an entertainment standpoint. Is that maybe one of the things that they're trying to position is, were the Bears trying to kind of sweeten their deal a little bit by going to Arlington Heights and saying, hey, what if we get the Sox? What if we bring them up there? How could that help us? So we can play a little tinfoil hat time. I don't know if it's too early in the episode for that right now, but there's that possibility. I think in my world, the way that I would kind of rank these things and what I would want, I mean, Sal makes a great point here saying that I want the team to move just so that we can get rid of the Southside jerseys. I'm all for that. I retweeted something earlier today from a follower of mine who said that, the Sox, moving to Arlington Heights, the only good thing that would come out of it is we would be able to get rid of those Southside jerseys once and for all. That would be a positive. I won't disagree with that.
No. We've got a flood of comments in here. It's great. Join the comment section on YouTube on Hip Sportsnet. But hey, another question there. Will the Guitar Center in Arlington Heights stay? We appreciate you, LA.
That's a great question.
In the comments.
That's a great question. But if I'm ranking the sites here, I think historically, if you look at it, the idea of being at 35th and Shields, I mean, that is very symbolic of this organization and when they came to here from Minneapolis, or excuse me, from St. Paul back in the 1900 season with the starting of the American League when they were the charter franchise. So, them being at 35th and Shields is very symbolic, I think, in that regard. If you had, I think, serious ownership, that area is ripe for development purposes, and you really could do some pretty creative and innovative things if you had the right developers come in there and turn that area into a little bit more of a tourist attraction. But Jerry Reinsdorf has always kind of frowned upon that for whatever the reason. So I would want it to be there. If it's not going to be there, bring them on down to Tinley Park. Super convenient for all of us. I know that. There's a lot of space. You can just bulldoze the old mental institution that's over there right off 183rd in Harlem. You got tons of space right there, or you bulldoze Odyssey Fun World on Harlem, or Lincoln Way North High School that is just literally sitting there doing nothing. You got a lot of space over there. You could even put it by the Tweeter Center, whatever it's called right now. You got your little entertainment district right there. You got a concert venue. You got the stadium. You built some bars and some restaurants around there. You could have a little battery right there in Tinley Park. So that's another option. I say that would be my number 2. Number 3, I think the United Center idea, where exactly that would go, would be kind of interesting to see. West Loop is really a changing area. I had a couple of dinners down there last week as part of my day job, and it's honestly hard to even recognize that neighborhood from when I was working down there consistently 6 or 7 years ago. It's changed so much now at this point. And if you were able to put a ballpark near the United Center, that would be an interesting dynamic. So it's going to really be fascinating to see how all of this plays out here over probably the next 3.5 years, because that's about how much time we've got to have a decision made.
Yeah, and I like Sal's comment here because I'm not in favor of the United Center move that you just talked about, despite all of the kind of uprising that's going on in the West Loop. I agree that the area has grown and spread out that way towards the UC. But he says keep the Sox away from Connor Bedard. No Sox at the United Center. That's very true. We do not want that stink of the White Sox, wearing off on a generational prospect.
And that's, look, that's a very valid point because, and I've talked about this a number of times here, everything went downhill for the Sox when that loser running back threw out first pitch at a game in August of 2021. Everything has been downhill for the White Sox since then. They got the stench of those losers on them. So let them go up to Arlington Heights, stay the fuck away from the White Sox. And right now, given the state of the organization, keep the Sox away from Connor Bedard. Let's get some Cubs back up there at the UC.
Yeah, I would not. It sucks. I do like the 35th in Shields location for all those reasons as you mentioned, for ease of access there. But I'm wondering, does the guaranteed rate field as it currently stands need to be torn down for them to stay there? I think that's a sticking point, and we won't know exactly right now because we're still a few years off on that in terms of the 2029 lease through that place. But if say they really did want to, just in theory, does that place need to come down, or does it need to be renovated? I know there was talk about possible retractable roof. Can't really put that on a new building. You might as well just build a new one there. So I'm just wondering if that was even an option on the table, salvaging that place there.
Look, I'm all for a retractable roof so that we don't have to live in Jerry's world with these rain delays. In fact, I almost find it interesting that he's in favor of having the retractable roof, knowing how much money he makes off of those games that, we all show up to, spend 3 hours at the park, that are eventually canceled and turn into a doubleheader. I'm just thinking out loud here. You can't put it on that stadium. So I would think, yes, the stadium does need to come down. It's going to happen at some point. I'm wondering if you put it back on the plot that was the original Old Comiskey Park, which would mean that Lot B wouldn't be a thing anymore. But that said, you would just sort of transition it back and forth the same way they did back in the early 90s there and face the ballpark the right way. I think it would be, a great spot for it. There's a lot of history there. You want to play the whole history game. I think that's your biggest marketing ploy. It's a great story. You could put a roof on that and you can face it directly towards the city as everybody wants to. And
would you be able to see the skyline? I always see those edits. Would you even be able to see the skyline from this positioning? Or would there be some other knockdowns required behind it?
I mean, I think you'd still be able to see some of it, depending on where you're sitting, though. Like, at least if you were upper deck behind home plate, you've got a beautiful view of the skyline, I think, right there. And lower level, maybe not.
And I would think it would also depend on the structure and from an architectural standpoint, how it gets built, because, you see all those pictures. I mean, I've got a picture behind me right now hanging up on my wall from that 1990 season when the new park is being built. And you just see how much higher elevation wise the new ballpark is versus Old Comiskey. And so would they maybe try to scale things down a little bit? And I think that if they were to get a new park and put it in that location, they need to really look at PNC Park in Pittsburgh as kind of the framework. A park that is only 2 levels on it. You've got your upper deck, none of this split upper deck bullshit with the 5 levels that you see at every new park now. Get away from that. Very, very compact. If anybody wants to go and really look at something unique, there was a concept that was pitched to Jerry back in 87 or 88 for Armour Square Park. I think I've shown both of you guys that. This is a time where you could try to do something really bold to try to recreate some of that kind of nostalgia. So I think if you built it the right way, you could definitely get the skyline in there.
Interesting. Yeah, I do remember seeing that. Was it CBS kind of did a full highlight and had like those renderings and graphics that you were just discussing there, Steve. All those proposed in there. So I mean, it's an interesting concept. I like the location as is, but unfortunately, I'm thinking that relocation is much more on the table than I think I'd previously thought. But this is why this stuff hits the news cycle, because you got to get out in front of it if you're going to go and extort money from governments, right, Steve? So you got to lay the groundwork here. That's what Jerry's been doing. So
I would just like to thank you guys in advance for your contributions to a new potential White Sox stadium.
Right. Yeah. That's where we're at. Relocation reports aren't slowing down anytime soon, especially with Boob's 3 reported new ones that came to light today. So we'll track that as it goes on. But we still got a ton to talk about in White Sox land here. While we're still on ownership, because it's kind of spearheaded by Jerry, you would imagine he wouldn't go and say shit to Crane's Chicago business if there was not a agenda at play there. Let's keep it in Jerry, in-house here with the Chicago White Sox. You guys got on the mic after the firings of Rick Hahn, Kenny Williams. So you gave a good summation of that. But the reports about replacements here, who's coming in to replace these guys? I know they want a singular decision maker. At least that's what they posited in their press release when this happened on Tuesday. And then the very next day, we get Chris Getz reports from Boob. And that was more than just, he did refer to him as the leading internal candidate, but then he also said expected to be named. And I just freaked out at that, because while we enjoy the Boob shtick, Steve, and your reply sort of gig that you've got going there, you and me talked about last week that Boob does have, for whatever reason, a in on White Sox business. There's always something, a little blip, like it's mentioned, that eventually comes out. He was the first one to even mention TLR in this case, and boom, that happens. It's not that he's 100% accurate all the time, but for whatever reason, he's got that in with White Sox business. And this Chris Getz nonsense scared me, because you'd talked about it for years, Steve. Whenever we talk about minor league player development and how I said Chris Getz needs to go, and you said not so fast, and he may be on a fast track to GM. This is the kind of shit that is so White Sox that we see almost playing out in front of us. Once again, nothing confirmed, but it's scaring the bejesus out of me.
It's almost as if they don't run and operate like a serious organization does, because we've now are 7 years into the Chris Getz minor league experience. There's not a whole lot to show for it. As our buddy Voodoo is talking about here, I think it was Bruce Levine had maybe made a comment that Getz has flourished as the Sox farm director.
If treaded water as a White Sox farm director.
If Chris Getz is what you are defining as flourishing, that word doesn't mean what you think it means. Okay. Words have meaning in the year of our Lord 2023 still. That's not what I would define as flourishing personally. Maybe I just have a different standard. I don't know. There's just nothing that Chris Getz has done to warrant him being a leading candidate for this. And Anthony and I, we talked about this ad nauseum Tuesday night. I may or may not have had a couple of 2-tree shots that look to be kind of premature now. So I don't have a whole lot else to offer on it, other than I don't want Chris Getz as the GM.
It was the happiest day of Steve's White Sox season. So we will always remember it for that, Rick and Kenny are gone. But I don't think there's a single soul out here in White Sox land maybe outside of Jerry, that really thinks that Chris Getz is going to be a good GM for the Chicago White Sox. This doesn't make any sense to me. I thought that they would name him pretty much right away after Nightingale came out with that report, and we'd be done with this, and that we were going to be talking about what this all means at this point with him as the GM, but that hasn't come yet. So it does lend me some sort of hope that maybe they are actually going to do a search for somebody else. It's sort of obvious, though, right now that he is the interim GM. Right. That said, could this be sort of a test run for him? Who knows? It's surprising, though, that they haven't officially named him interim GM at this point, though, because there's been a lot of, not major moves, but a lot of minor transactional stuff that's gone on. Obviously, he can't trade with any teams until the offseason starts. Then they want to have a decision maker named at that point. But I don't know. I think that if it was going to be Getz, it would have already been officially announced at this point. So it lends me some hope here.
Conspiracy theory to that, though, real quick. I'm sorry, Jonathan, to cut you off there.
Go ahead.
Given how the White Sox operate, given the way that they, and actually not just the White Sox, but Jerry Reinsdorf-owned organizations, because we see this with one of the United Center tenants, the secret contract extensions that happen. What if the deal's already done and they just haven't announced it yet? I mean, would that shock either one of you?
No. It's a good tinfoil hat time, though. I like that. I like bringing that into the fold here, Steve.
Did they need to wait for Vanilla Ice to actually perform?
Maybe I need to make a tinfoil headband.
Ooh, there's a concept. Yeah. With all this, I think what Tony had said, not actually officially naming it, because if that was going to be the case, I know a lot of people go down that road and think that, okay, it would have just been announced at the same time on that Tuesday. And Steve, I know that you were a little bit surprised by that, especially in light of the Bob Nightingale report that came out then the day following. But I'm going to operate under the assumption that's just going to happen because #that's so White Sox. But it's worth monitoring these other reports because there is no decision in place. And I also wonder what end of season means. That was a term that was used in the press release. Does that mean end of the regular season when the White Sox are done playing baseball and we'll be watching playoff baseball from their couches like all of us in through October into early November probably? Or does it mean at the end of the World Series? And even then, does that give you enough time to interview any potential candidates that you may have interest in from teams that are in playoff races?
That is a fascinating point. I know we talked about that in the garage last night. It's almost as if the wording on the time frame was vague intentionally. Kind of a classic White Sox move almost right there. So it's definitely something to continue to monitor because we've got 5 weeks left of the regular season here. So time is of the essence. You look at some of the external candidates and some of the people that you would want to hire from successful organizations. I know I'd heard the name of the Dodgers director of player development in some passing circles as a person of interest. Obviously, there's James Click, former GM of the Astros, who is in an advisory role right now with the Blue Jays. So, that's a team that is kind of right on the periphery of playoff contention there. We don't know if maybe there's an assistant with the Barbs or, another team that's going to be in the playoff mix there. So who knows? I tell you, a guy I would love to see him pluck, but it seems like he's ticketed for New York. David Stearns, if you want to just drive 90 miles south, give him the keys to the fucking kingdom and let him do whatever it is he wants to do. He's done a really good job with Milwaukee operating with payroll constraints. He's got the background working with the Astros. That's a guy that, I would be very interested in. But again, all the circles and everything that I'm seeing, it feels as though he is ticketed to be going to work for Steve Cohen.
Do you actually think that they're going to get a top of the market name in here to run this franchise, or is it going to be it'll be a first timer? It'll be somebody off the radar. Getz sort of fits that mold as well. It just Sale with the new comment in here on Alavila.
Yeah, good. Fuck it. Sorry.
Wow. We're all trying to throw Sale's comment up here. Yeah, cheap. That's what they're going to look for. Something cheap. Something cheap. That's what I expect.
Alex Avila is coming back to catch for us.
There you go. Bring the whole family in. Make it a family affair. But I expect something to be, a cheap, quick fix.
Did someone already able to almost secure a position from this, but not in the White Sox? Did Mike Rizzo leverage the White Sox to get his offer with the Nats completed? I don't think it's official yet, but it's happening. Right?
It kind of seems like it. Boob was reporting that that's basically a done deal now. So, hey, good for him. That
was a name that you and I talked about, and Chicago native with the
scout that found and got Frank Edward Thomas signed.
About the only blemish right now is that Steven Strasburg's contract wasn't insured, but at the same time, he's also led them up the mountain to become a champion, which, Rick Hahn was never able to do here, right? And then it looks like the Nationals, at least how they're playing as of late, they are surging. There's actual growth that's coming about through Rizzo's transactions from the sell-off from the previous core that they had in selling Juan Soto. That's looking good because, of what he's doing in San Diego, and they weren't going to be able to afford him and all of that stuff. And the Nationals are actually putting together that run again. So it's like framework can be there with a guy like him. So looks like he's staying in DC though. I'd agree there. But were there any other external candidates that you guys had seen out there yet? Because honestly, with all of that's been going on, it is really hard to keep up with everything that's going on. Were there any ones that we didn't mention here that you guys had seen in any other circles?
No, really. The only ones that
Dayton Moore, obviously, with
Dayton Moore is getting talked about, and like even John Morosi had mentioned about James Click, but there's not really a dearth of names.
That felt like more like should be a candidate, but is he actually officially, like, is there any,
Yeah, that's another thing that you could almost say is concerning, the fact that there aren't more names being immediately linked to this to kind of lead you down that path of, well, it's fait accompli that this is going to be Chris Getz.
Right. It's just another wrinkle in all of this, talking about have the White Sox contacted any of these guys. I know Boob had put out the report that with the Chris Getz expected and Dayton Moore would be joining him. And then we got the whole father-son dynamic, right? Was he the one that described it as that? Incredible comment earlier by our guy Sal. He went to a publication I'm not very familiar with, but apparently that reporter has contact with Dayton Moore, knows him well. And Dayton Moore, that being that, has not had contact with the White Sox, says they have not contacted him, despite Boob's report that this is almost, expected for him to come here. So there's a lot going on here that I don't really know what to make of at this moment.
Yeah, I heard that as well, Johnny, and that it's very interesting because of the way that Nightingale reported this earlier this week, that was the expected move. I'm not going to get into why I don't want Dayton Moore here. I think everybody's got their own reasons for it, but stay away from the same is just my hope. Although I don't have much faith that they will go out and get a top of the market candidate to come in here and run things. But I really, as you're describing Rizzo, I want somebody who has done this before, has been able to take a team to the promised land, and not just the same things that we've seen with the Hahn tenure of false promises, things that don't work out. And Steve, when you bring up Stearns, yes, somebody who's worked under a tight budget before, I think would be very beneficial for this team because we all know that Jerry's not going to go to the top of the market for free agents either. So, yeah, I mean, we can have our own wish list. At the end of the day, I still expect us to probably be disappointed because we are White Sox fans.
Yeah, and with Dayton Moore, there was the back-to-back pennants and the one World Series title in Kansas City. But you go and look overall at that tenure there. That's not overly inspiring.
He got there in 2006. They had 3 winning seasons.
Right.
But again, as we talked about the other day, Anthony, the 2 pennants, the back-to-back pennants, that's more trips to the World Series than the White Sox have had under Jerry Reinsdorf's ownership. So to him, that's an upgrade.
Right. All right. I'm with Sal here. I wish Jerry needed to scour the list of MLB Executive of the Year's winners to choose next GM. I'd be in favor of that too, Sal. But we'll keep tabs on what's going on here. Just for my White Sox sake, I'm going to operate under the assumption that it will be Chris Getz, hoping for that to not be the case. But I'm not getting up for the letdown, guys.
As you shouldn't. I made that mistake on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch Steve get up for the letdown, though.
Yeah. That was a good clip, too. Go and check it out on Twitter. The last 14 hours as a White Sox fan posted that. Was that Wednesday morning. So, yeah, go and check that out for the reaction from last episode from Steve and Tony. All right. Let's move on to the next thing. And this is a very unfortunate one. Friday night's incident at the ballpark, guys. Very, very strange circumstances, especially with the lack of information that has come out after that. If you have been living under a rock, don't know what's going on. 2 people were struck by bullets sitting out in the left field bleachers, section 161 out there. And it's unclear, according to all reports, CPD, White Sox themselves, that they don't know if the bullet came from inside or outside the ballpark. I know there's theories aplenty that have been spewed out there. Tony, even a map that you brought up and showed us last night about a potential origin of where the bullet came from. But scary situation nonetheless. And apparently this happened in the 4th inning and they continued playing. This is officially the wildest White Sox week ever. I'm just going to dub it that.
Yeah, there's a lot to go from here. Obviously, these things will lend themselves to all different sorts of conspiracy theories. The way this was handled, I think, it for me at least, is the biggest story of this. Reports come out that A's family members were notified of this incident and, brought out of the stadium into secure locations. The game continued after the incident. There was no sound of any gunshots within the stadium. I'm not, very well versed in physics and how a bullet can travel almost a mile and land inside the stadium. But as you brought up last night, Johnny, I mean, imagine if it hit a player on the field. What would have happened then?
I sure as shit guarantee you that the game would have stopped.
Yes. I mean, we're talking within 100 yards of actual baseball players on the field. Not that a fan isn't any more important than somebody on the field, but the fact that the game didn't stop is very surprising to me. I don't know about you guys.
Well, I think part of there's just so much confusion going on with this. Personally, it seems very hard for me to believe that this would have gone off in the stadium, because you watch there's a video that is making its way around the X machine and shows section 161 there. You see a little bit of movement about halfway up the section there, but you don't see this mass exodus of people. I feel like if a gun had gone off, you would have just seen people dispersing like crazy.
You see how people flock to a fight that goes on in the stadium, and that's just 2 drunk idiots swinging at each other and mostly missing.
Right. So it's just very bizarre to me that you didn't see that happen there. And then Tony, you talk about, them moving the A's players out of there, and then this game just continuing on for the whole time. And then you go and you see some of the things that were being tweeted from the police scanner accounts saying that, and people listening to the actual scanner saying, we're not going to talk about this on the air right now. And then you have this press conference supposed to be set for 10:45 that miraculously gets canceled. So all that does is lend itself to conspiracy theories and to suspicion of something being afoot. And no official word. You get this very canned, generic statement coming from the organization. You get a generic statement from CPD, and there's been no follow-up in almost 48 hours now.
They did not want this in the headlines at all.
No.
Somebody does not want that, whatever it is. The shot spotter reports actually came out and said that there was 9 gunshots fired in the 3rd inning of that baseball game about a mile away. But police went to check that out, and nothing came of that either. So very interesting. It's very interesting to try and put this all together. And Johnny, your question yesterday is what was the trajectory? Can we get StatCast on where that thing came from? Because you don't know. And that's what's crazy to me is you just don't know.
Right. I will say that the White Sox, I thought it was insane the first time when you just saw the statement in that they're not ruling out, inside or outside the ballpark, still trying to determine that. And I thought, this is ridiculous. How could it possibly be outside? Then you go and see that video, and we've all been in a game when a fight happens, when fucking people are just yelling at each other, and there's a ruckus. There's a whole crowd. Everybody, stands up around them, and they all of a sudden become more focused on whatever altercations going on in the stands than on what's going on in the field. And that never happened out there. I think the people 3-4 rows in front of the 2 injured, they didn't even know what was going on. They were just watching the game. The A's left fielder, he has no idea what's going on. He's just checking his card to see where to play against, Noodle Boy and, whatever it may be. And, whatever. He didn't turn around. It looked like anything. And it was just the oddest thing. So when you go and see that, it's like, okay, I guess that does leave that open, that it could have come from outside the ballpark. I thought it was ridiculous at first, but the fact that we don't know anything further on this is just really, really odd. And unfortunately, I feel like it's going to be a significant period of time before we do, because they're just going to throw it under the guise of the investigation going on, which I understand does take some time for them to be able to do that. But this kind of situation that needs answers, especially the White Sox are going to go on the road. And then when they come back, will we have any new information by the time they start their next homestand? What the fuck's going on here?
It's almost like they're banking on that. They're getting on the plane. They're going to go to Baltimore, get destroyed for 3 days, and then they're just going to hope that they come back and not have to address it. I mean, this is an absolutely wild situation. And then, as was expected, I think a lot of the commentary on the Twitter machine from certain fan bases that portend to not care about the White Sox went exactly where you would expect them to go. So now we have to deal with all of this nonsense here and these ridiculous bullshit narratives. But I mean, this is just the most bizarre thing. Just when you think it can't possibly get any worse or more bizarre, being a Sox fan, watching and observing this organization, they find a way. They always find a way. That's why, Tony, I told you weeks ago when you said, is this the low point? I said, it's the White Sox. It can always get worse.
Yeah, this one was not on the bingo card.
No.
It was not on the bingo card. And obviously we hope that those who were struck by that make a recovery here soon and are able to get back to work and everything. But the fact that somebody could just be sitting there enjoying, a Friday night or even any day, you're just sitting in the ballpark and you're struck by a bullet, not something that you would expect. I mean, we've had a lot of different White Sox related things that are terrible. this is probably one of the worst of the season so far here.
So I was not too in tune with it, but after this happened, obviously people are looking forward to similar cases. Has this ever happened? Could this happen? As we're trying to extract information out of this whole situation, and reports for that it did happen at some time in St. Louis. I don't know exactly when, but that was a past one. I just wonder if this happens here on this Friday night. Who's to say it can't happen again? And I go and look at that video, and there's little kids playing in the aisle, three rows, 4 rows up, just normal, jumping around, whatever. There's other people, shit. What if you're like walking up, whatever. What we got was someone was grazed in the stomach, another was struck in the leg. What if someone's walking up the aisle and they're in front of those people of where that would have happened, right to the head? Like that's kind of shit that when I think about it on that scale, it's like, okay, it happened once. Who's to say it can't happen again? Is that why we got the looking for a retractable dome report today? Like, shit.
Yeah, it's an interesting point with that one, Jonathan.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that angle. That's just another wild set of circumstances that seems to only find its way to 35th and Chance.
I really do. I think everybody just wants clarity, more information, know exactly what the hell happened, where it originated from, all that. But unfortunately, we don't have answers right now. So, White Sox, give some answers if you want all the speculation to stop and you want the shit to stay out of the headline. CBD, same thing. It's unfortunate because Steve and I were out there on Thursday night, and it's, Steve, I know you talked about like narratives and like all this and that about the area. It's the first time we've ever had something like this happen, I think, in our lifetimes. You go back a little bit further, Steve. So correct me if I'm wrong. If it was before 1993, let me know.
I mean, there
happened there.
I can always remember, hearing people tell stories of at the old ballpark when the Robert Taylor homes were, just across, just across the Ryan there, and people talking about, bullets coming into the stadium. I don't like if any of that is true. I mean, who the hell knows? I mean, this could just be one of these classic, Chicago urban legends at this point. But I know that was a thing that was talked about would happen in the 80s. So, I mean, who the hell really knows, though?
Yeah. Even if this is just a freak random occurrence and what they say is true and it come from outside the stadium and that all comes to light, it's only to the White Sox. There's like you said, Tony, I didn't have this on the bingo card this year, but at the same time, now that I'm looking at it, it's like this is just the way that the year has gone from the White Sox, one thing after another. And that was, kind of a summation of this week because that was just one event of the many that we've discussed here that have gone on. So, all right, let's get on to the next topic. The last one that we have here. Guys, there's actual White Sox baseball played this week. It was mostly uninspiring, but it happened on the field. And we don't need to trudge through it all. But I will say that there's been a random Noodle Boy power resurgence. And Lenin Sosa smacked a few out of the yard. And they did finally salvage 2 here. So we are talking post-victory here on Sunday. But let's talk a little bit of what we saw Corey Lee call up to. So wherever you guys want to chime in on that side of things.
I think first and foremost, obviously, Noodle Boy probably needs to get tested because, 2 home runs in a week.
Steve can't accept it. He just can't accept it.
Something's not right here. Something's not right. And I think we need to get to the bottom of that. I think one of the bigger concerns, obviously, was the problems that we saw from the pitching staff, against the Seattle Mariners, obviously in 2 of those 3 games there. And then these first 2 games against Oakland, the worst team in the league, and you're getting smacked around the yard by them. Very troubling, and to see Dylan Cease kind of continue a trend that has gone on for a little while here, that's cause for concern in my eyes. The Sox, as a team, in this Oakland series, were hitting the ball out of the ballpark a little bit more. So, that's a plus, I think, particularly when you look at it coming from guys like Lenin Sosa, who's, trying to find his footing here at the major league level. So it was just a really weird uninspiring, I think, is probably the best word that you really could use. So well done there, Jonathan. It looks ugly right now. Today was good, but I mean the rest of it, man.
When we were out there Thursday, man, the vibes were flat. It was, granted, it was hot. It was probably the hottest day of the week, if not of the summer. But with that heat wave that was going on, but we were sitting out there in Lot B. I was trying to liven it up, throw a little music on the speakers, crack a couple beers. Steve and I just talking, and this is supposed to be the night of the Oakland 68 cell giveaway, which was kind of hyped up as everybody wanted to attend, and at least everybody who throws a Reddit upvote on it, if you look at that, attendance should have been much higher. But I will say we did talk to some of them out there, and it was cool to get their perspective on it. We got ourselves some self shirts as well, Steve. But it was just absolutely flat. And sure, that I will say that the heat does have something to do with that, but it is just like so uninspiring. And as you like the terminology that you guys always use, the death march. We are amidst the death march to the end here. And it's just sad. It's sad because I still, I still enjoyed myself going out there, but you just look at it and it's like nobody really looks like on the field. They don't really look like they want to be there. I think, sure, you got some young guys fighting for, can they be the guy that can stick around in Major League Baseball on a roster, or are they a quad A player? That's what we're trying to figure out right now. But other than that, it's like, okay, we need the all-important Brian Shaw innings. Glad we missed that while we were playing bags last night, guys. And other than that, it's just flat. Maybe you get a good performance like today. It was nice to see Clevenger get up into double digits and strikeouts. But other than that, they won. Moncada went 4 for 4 today. It's like the old gift that I used after every loss. Sonny from a Bronx Tale. Nobody cares.
I was going to say the only one that's out there that looks like they're playing with any sort of desire to be out there is Mike Clevenger right now. Really. And that's a guy who's playing for a contract.
He's looked good lately.
He's looked good. He's coming back off of his injury. Probably the best pitcher on the White Sox right now. You talked about Dylan Cease taking a step back. It's sad. Uninspired is the right word for this.
All right. We got a comment from our guy Voodoo, and he says, White Sox spring training starts in August. Feels like that. I agree. But if they are starting spring training, why are they not playing with more urgency to hashtag set the tone then, Steve?
That raises a question, and that is very concerning on the Pedro Grifol front, and it leads you to really puts into focus that this isn't the guy for the job, because you do have to go out and hashtag set the tone in spring training. I feel like I've made that abundantly clear the last 2 seasons. I'm a big tone setter guy. Everybody knows that. One thing I wanted to kind of circle back to a little bit here when you were talking about the Oakland 68 group that was there for the game on Thursday. And it's fascinating. You look at the dichotomy between the 2 fan bases. And I talked about, and I wrote about this, how I don't think they hate their ownership more than the A's and the White Sox. So them coming together a couple days after Jerry Reinsdorf is floating about relocating this team if he doesn't get a new stadium. They did 35 years ago the thing the A's are going through right now. But you just look at the different reaction to it. A's fans have just turned to just pure, unbridled hatred for John Fisher and wanting to do anything they can to publicly shame him so that he no longer has control of their team. Whereas what is happening with us and what we are seeing, and it was a perfect example of it on Thursday, apathy has really taken hold of this fan base more so than at any point I can really remember, because that should have been an opportunity for the 2 fan bases to come together and to let their voice be heard. And let
tinfoil hat time, Steve. Jerry Reinsdorf knew about this reverse boycott, floated that story out to Cranes earlier in the week, then fires Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams right ahead of it, thinking that this might be, an embarrassing moment for his franchise.
Paid off Mother Nature.
Yes, that was the next part.
Yeah.
He paid off Mother Nature to raise the temps and made sure that it was only like 5,000 people in his stadium that day to avoid any sort of, public display of his own ineptitude. That's my tinfoil hat theory.
I like it. We're rolling deep on tinfoil hats here.
Yeah, we are. Wow.
Yeah. Speaking on that, though, Steve, everyone that we talked to from that group, awesome. They were awesome.
Yeah.
Who we interacted with, and it was just cool to get their perspective in person because I think we all saw the response that they gave at that game back in June when they did the original reverse boycott out in Oakland, and it was quite the scene. It made some national headlines for it, especially what they get up to. I want to say close to 29,000 in the building at Oakland Coliseum that night, when their attendance has been obviously bottom of the barrel throughout MLB this season. So to have that, and there was a traveling segment of those people that were there, and it was just cool to interact with them and kind of share a common bond over that sort of stuff.
And it's kind of scary because we could literally be in the same exact position 3.5 years from now.
Right.
That's a reality that we have to kind of be mindful of here. We've got 3.5 years now of this floating over our heads. We talked about relocation for as far as potential stadium sites in the Chicagoland area. But, he did put another city in another state out there in print for other people to see from a leverage play standpoint. So it's out there now. I mean, this isn't going to be the last we're going to hear of this, unfortunately, I don't think.
I think it's going to be a long and winding road of rumors, reports, and people just giving their takes on where the White Sox should go. I think that's what's going to get most annoying.
I still say,
like Steve suggesting Tinley Park.
Listen, it would be
times between now and
it'd be great logistically for us three. I mean, let's be real about it.
That's very true.
Well, I mean, for Johnny and I, if they do wind up in Arlington Heights, it's just a quick trip down 355. I don't know about for you because you're over in Northwest Indiana. So as you said, it would be a little difficult, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. I still don't want to go north.
No, but then, like we talked about, you'd be able to get rid of the stupid Southside softball jerseys. You can't wear Southside softball uniforms.
Did you not get him to say that the jersey was cool, Johnny? I thought I heard that.
No, he didn't concede that. He did concede that Tony La Russa may have triggered the one
that is fake news
that made him happy this year. No, he held firm on the Southside softball jersey.
Okay. I had some conflicting reports. Beers were had last night, gentlemen.
But you and I enjoy it though. I think it's a good look. I like the look of wearing it. It's a good style icon. But I do understand the issue with the pants, the black pinstripes there. That's a little.
It offends
my. It looks like Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's done that for a million years, right? Ever since both their softball and baseball programs do that. So I understand that, but I like wearing it just as a jersey, like wear a t-shirt underneath, leave it open, and it's Luis Robert. So about one of the only jerseys that I really care to wear anymore.
I mean, the only other Sox jerseys worth wearing are from guys no longer playing for the team.
Right. Yeah. One last thing on this, among all of these reports, everything that's gone on this week, all the events that have taken place, firings, shootings, bad baseball, other things like that. Is Tony La Russa back in the mix with Jerry? That's where we need to go. Tinfoil, I don't know tinfoil at time or not, because it's not official. It's been denied by the White Sox that Tony La Russa is back in an official role. But Tony La Russa is good friends with Jerry Reinsdorf. We all know that, and it was Boob on the initial report that even sparked this debate. And the rumor has it that he was the one that got in the ear to say, fire Rick, fire Kenny. Did this happen? Are we buying that Tony La Russa is back with the White Sox initiating this stuff?
So I didn't actually see the part where it said that he inspired Jerry.
These are the rumors that come about after this.
Yeah, I didn't see that
in an advisory role, right?
Yeah, I didn't see that rumor floated until you had brought it up yesterday, Johnny. But I will say this: it's very interesting to see, headlines still coming out from Paul Sullivan, like on Friday, saying that he was back with the team, and yet you've got Ryan McGuffey saying he's not. So I don't understand where the breakdown happened within the media, but it's interesting because, as you mentioned, he is a good friend to Jerry. Does it have to be official? Is he on payroll, or is he just lending a voice at this point? Not sure.
Would it surprise me if he is imparting his knowledge to the chairman in an effort to spur some decision making? Would it shock me? No, it wouldn't.
Doesn't the Dayton Moore rumor report kind of lead a little bit into that based on TLR's history and comments on him?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, you have that element of it too. It's honestly what we have seen from this organization for much of the last decade is no clear delineation of roles and responsibilities. So everybody has plausible deniability. Tony La Russa is not part of the organization. No, he's not. Right. That's so White Sox.
That's so White Sox indeed. It's been a very White Sox week, wildest White Sox week ever, in my opinion. I just cannot remember a gauntlet like this of one thing happening after another in terms of major headlines that are keeping the White Sox interesting. That's one thing. Hey, the team on the field is playing uninspired baseball, but the organization is finding a way to stay in the news. So if that's the goal, I mean, they're succeeding in that route. I can't say all of it's positive, but they are being talked about nationally through all of this. And we're here to break it all down for you. So we appreciate everybody that jumped in here on this comment section on Sunday Funday here. Go and subscribe on Tip Sports on YouTube so you can join the conversation next time. You can like us on Facebook and jump in there as well. Fortunately, can't see your Twitter comments. Well, we appreciate your follow and your engagement over there. Come on over to the YouTubes and Facebooks so you can get those comments in here. And as always, check out ontipsportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports, literature, and podcasting needs. Final thoughts. Let's go around table and wrap this baby up.
Just an absolutely wild week. You're going to be very hard pressed to find a more fascinating week of events in White Sox history and for years to come. I think this is going to be something that we're going to be talking about years from now, because obviously with the relocation discussion, new stadium talk, and the idea of potentially a shooting having happened in the ballpark and how that gets addressed so that it doesn't happen again, kind of important. So the fallout from this, we won't know much of anything here in the short term, I don't think, but a lot of developments to keep monitoring, as we like to say in the business.
Just another week of business as usual for the franchise located at 35th and Shields. I know Steve said that this was, you'll be hard pressed to find a wilder week, but as I've asked him numerous times, can it get worse? The answer always seems to be yes. So my final thought is more of a question. Can it get worse?
I don't know. We had a show, Steve and I did a Sunday Funday back, I think it was after the Mets series, and we had penned that one as drilling through rock bottom. We're way below the surface right now, boys. It's insane. So I think, yeah, Tony, it probably can in some way, shape, or form. And also, if we're talking in-season stuff, there's still, 5 left? So see if they can outdo themselves over the next month plus here. That's, I think what we're all going to be keeping an eye on for. All right, my last thought, though, will go completely different direction, something that I just wanted to get off my chest. I fucking still hate the Jake Berger trade. Fuck you, Kenny, for that being your parting gift to the White Sox. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, this is unfair to Jake Eater. You can't just throw him under the bus before whatever. I understand. It's not fair to the person. But someone asked, he has to be the next Cy Young. They said, or they made that, posited that comment, that he has to be the next Cy Young for White Sox fans to love him. And my response to that is, next Chris Sale will do. I'll take that. That'll make me feel a little better about it down the road, but I miss Jake Berger. That's my final thought. All right. Till next time, boys. White Sox forever.
White Sox forever.
White Sox for life.